Brian, so thank you.
Yeah, great to be here. I seriously appreciate, I love speaking in college classrooms. So a couple rules for this conversation. Everything is going to work better from this point forward if you guys engage. So when people ask me, and I'll get into the whole presentation stuff coming up, but I just want to set the stage a little bit here. When people ask me, and they always do, oh, what's one thing you look back on that you kind of regret? Or what's one decision you made you wish you made differently? I will tell you every time my answer is simple. When I was in your shoes, and even early in my career, I was afraid to ask questions because I thought it was a sign of weakness. I thought that if I asked a question to somebody that showed me as not knowing something and somebody else was snickering and wondering to themselves like, oh yeah, I'm smarter than he is, and I self-censored. And what that does, it gets you into a pattern of making mistakes because you're not inquiring. You're not getting to the real best practice. You're not getting to the real answer that you need. So serve yourself well. Do yourself a favor by asking questions and engaging in this conversation. Because I guarantee what's going to happen is if you ask a question, the person next to you is thinking, yeah, I was kind of wondering that too. Okay. It's not going to be some competition. The goal here is to learn and to set you up for success. And the best way you do that is get the answers to the questions you need. I'm going to talk. I'm going to engage. I'm going to give you ideas. You're going to walk away with this from actionable things you can do. But it's still best if you're involved and you ask questions. So at any point during this, raise your hand and I will notice you and I will come to you. Okay. Because that's the way this should work. And I'll take little breaks throughout so that everybody can ask questions if they've got them. And you really should be thinking that way. Because the only way you improve is by asking questions of those people that have knowledge that you don't, that aren't, not that they're better, it's just that they have gone through something you haven't. So just tap into the experience, whether it's with me or other guest speakers or other people you come in touch with. Ask questions. Okay. You're also going to play a role in this. There's 4 major sections to the conversation that I have, but we won't be able to get to all of them. There's a lot of detail here. We probably will get to 2. So I'm going to let you guys choose at one point which 2 things we're going to talk about. So you are going to vote on that. So this is choose your own adventure. This is customized based on what you guys need, based on where you are. So just get ready to be involved. Okay. Can I share my screen? Did I just say screen? Can I share my screen, Dwayne? That was tough words. It says that I'm disabled. So is that okay?
Yep. Let me. Done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Let me go over here. Show that. Real big screen. Everybody see my screen? Just somebody give me a thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's get past that. So I'm going to do this briefly just to give a little bit of context, just so you know who the heck I am, because somebody going too in depth into their own career path is kind of like somebody bragging about their fantasy football team. It gets kind of old after a while, right? So we'll just go through this quickly so you know who the heck I am. There's also one major point that will come out of this that we'll get to. I got hired right out of college at CNN Sports Illustrated. Now, those are 2 of the biggest names in the media world. And normally when you want to work in the sports media, you start out in a small market like Bozeman, Montana, or Pocatello, Idaho, and you slowly work your way up. It is very strange, or I should say, there's a unique reason why I got hired at these 2 massive brands coming together to form a sports network. And that is a big strategy that you guys will want to employ. And we'll get into that in a second. But I started as a production assistant. I was an associate producer, senior producer. And what that essentially means, I was at CNN Sports Illustrated for 7 years. What that essentially means is I was an individual contributor. I showed up, I had certain tasks I had to do that day. At the end of the day, I was done and I'd start all over again the next day. I made individual contributions to how the whole organization ran. But I didn't have to worry about what was happening 3 months from now. I didn't have to worry about those bigger, broader things. 7 years into my career, and I'm producing shows, I'm creating stuff that millions of people are watching. I loved every minute of it. I'm covering games, I'm editing highlights, I'm going to press conferences, loved it, right? Happy as could be. But I reached a point where I was like, I want to get bigger. I want to manage the whole system. I want to do it all. And so I ended up leaving and going to Fox Sports Northwest, where I was the news director. That's a massive shift because now I'm not an individual contributor anymore. I'm not just producing a show that airs on a certain day. I'm hiring staff, I'm forming budgets, I'm evaluating resources, I'm planning for spring training 6 months ahead, football training camp, how we're going to coverage things, asset allocation, etc. Part of the reason I bring that up is because you will have that happen at some point of your career. You will make a jump from being a coordinator to then being a manager or something of that nature. The more you can do now to get yourself ready for that will actually make you promote faster. Because even when you're in that individual contributor role, you'll be observant, seeing how things work, knowing what to look for, and setting yourself up for a higher ceiling. So while you're in college, layer in some business classes. Now, I know a lot of sports, I don't know the specifics of Catawba, but I know a lot of sports management programs are housed in the business school, and because of that, there are business classes associated. If that's the case, awesome. If that's not the case, take some of those classes because that was a big learning curve for me. That was something I had to learn on the fly, and that's not easy. So you're in the position trying to learn how to do a $5.1 million budget, yearly budget, production budget, or hiring staff, or just dealing with people and personalities. So the more you can get that kind of knowledge early and be prepared for that big move of your career, the better off you will be. Just something to file away and keep in the back of your head. After, wow, that was 7 years at CNN Sports Illustrated, another 6 at Fox Sports Northwest. For the last 8, I've been at work in sports. I'm the VP of content and engaged learning. Now, part of the reason I bring that up is because, yeah, we can talk about my role. I do a lot of writing. I host our Work in Sports podcast. I've created our sports career game plan. I do all kinds of stuff. But the real reason I'm bringing it up is because to this conversation, I bring my 20 years of experience, but I also bring the 200 people that I've interviewed as part of the Work in Sports podcast. So I interview talent acquisition managers. I interview CMOs. I interview director of sales. I interview people in scouting. I interview people who are sports agents. And that forms a lot of the knowledge I'm going to share. It is not just one person trying to tell you how the sports world works. This is accumulation of people all across the nation in all different levels of decision-making and hiring. So just know that there is some credibility behind all this. This isn't just me making it up. Okay. Matter of fact, most of it is coming from everybody else. I throw ideas at them and they say, yep, that's exactly what's happening. So let's get into this. There are 4 major foundations for getting hired in the sports industry. And these are the 4 kind of pillars that I'm talking about and where we can decide from this point forward where this conversation will go. So the first is gaining the right experience. And what I mean by that is you can go through college and get a great GPA, but that is not necessarily going to line you up with the needs of the industry. It's all important, but you have to be strategic in your choices and matching yourself to industry needs. So that means being very strategic about internships, about course selection, about understanding those skills that are in demand, researching and knowing the industry, and getting career clarity where you want to go. So that's one major section we can talk about today. The next is building and maintaining your network. 2 keywords there. You got to build it. You got to maintain it. It's not a quantity game. It's a focus on quality. So we can go into a lot of different strategies and tactics there as well. Super important. Now, I will tell you, a lot of people will say to you, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I hate that saying. Drives me insane. Cannot stand it. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first started at CNN Sports Illustrated, there were 5 people that were hired just because they knew people. One person was the son of a GM. There was another person who was the son of a USA Today sports media critic. There was another person, well, I won't go through everyone, but there was 5 people. All 5 of them flamed out within the first year. Because yeah, they knew people, but they couldn't do the job. And organizations have gotten smarter. They're like, I'm not just going to hire this influential person's cousin who's going to flame out and not be able to do the job. Now, that's not to say networking isn't important. It's not to say that knowing people isn't important, but it's a combination of the two. You have to marry your efforts in networking with the right type of experience that solves a problem at an organization. Can't be just one or the other. So it's not who you know over what you know. It's the 2 things having to work together. So we can talk about that as well. Mastering your cover letter, resume, and personal brand, obviously super important. This is the thing that presents you out to the marketplace. There are best practices of all of these things. There is no one perfect way. People will try to tell you that this is the perfect format for it. It doesn't work that way because humans and machines, but humans are reading it and humans are naturally subjective. So we talk about best practices. We talk about the best way to do things in like directives versus like, this is it. This is the only thing. We give concepts that you should apply. So we get into that too as well. And then the final is my personal favorite. So interviewing for jobs and internships. And the reason it's my personal favorite is because it's the final 10 yards of the sprint. You can do everything else right. You can gain the right experience. You can build and maintain your network. You can have an on-point resume, cover letter, personal brand. All your first impressions could be incredible. But if you can't interview, if you can't convey that in that final moment with someone who's going to decide your future, it's all for naught. So you have to focus in on this final 10 yards of the sprint. You have to focus in on that or somebody else is going to pass you. So it's an important thing to really be stressing and understanding. Now, you get better at it over time. Sometimes you just got to take some reps, but we can frame your mind around a lot of these expectations. Other ways I approach things is put yourself in the shoes of the other person. What are they looking for? What do they need? How do you solve their problems? That's the approach we're going to take. So this is where you guys all get involved. And Dwayne, you might have to help me count on the because I can't see quite everybody, but let's vote on this. Let's vote on this conversation because we do have a limited amount of time. We can't get into all this nuance today. You can have me back anytime you want. We can cover the other two, but for today, let's pick two. So everybody can vote twice. We ready? Somebody give me a nod, something. All right, give me some action here. Make sure the camera isn't frozen. All right. So who would like to be involved, learning, talking about gaining the right experience and the strategies behind that? Do I see zero hands? Wow, that's amazing. That's actually one of the most important subjects. Okay. Building and maintaining your network. People are alive, right? Okay, good. You're just making sure. All right. Looks like we got a good number there. Okay. Resume, cover letter, personal brand. Oh, sorry, Dwayne, go ahead.
8. We had 8 there-ish. You can vote
Okay.
twice, guys.
And then interviewing for jobs and internships. Wow, a lot of action. All right. So if I'm roughly estimating, I saw networking and interviewing probably were the top two. Is that what we guess?
Yeah. Between
Yeah, you say?
all right, between building and maintaining your network and the middle two, if you want to go with building, maintaining your network, vote for that one. All right, if you want to do cover letter, all that stuff. Yeah, it's going to be the networking. So networking and job interviews.
All right, awesome. Now, I have to do this because I think it's a public service that I have to handle all of you. I'm going to tell you all one strategy for gaining the right experience first, okay? Because I have to do this. This is like my public service announcement. Right now, while you're in college and while you start to get some level of career clarity, I'm sure a lot of you right now are saying, I love sports, but I don't know exactly what that means or what that means that I want to do. Once you put the effort into figuring out what that means for you and what it is you want to do in the industry, please, 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 I'm begging you, if you do this, you'll be ahead of most of the competition. Go find 10 or 15 jobs that interest you, okay? Go find them. Doesn't matter where they are. You're not applying to them. You're doing research. Go look at the job descriptions and pull out the skills that they are saying that they want for this job. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you want to work in social media for a pro team. Awesome. Go look at 15 social media coordinator jobs. Read every job description. Pull out every skill that they're saying they want. So if it's Photoshop, if it's HTML, if it's Facebook budget, AdWords, whatever it is, pull those out into a spreadsheet. Put your skill level currently next to that, 0 to 10. You have to map yourself to the industry needs. If you do this, you are learning, if I want to get hired in this role, this is what it takes. This is the bar that I need to meet. This is how the industry expects me to deliver myself. So if you don't know that and you just go through and you just graduate with a high GPA and you don't do these things that are directly matching you to the industry, you will struggle more than you realize. Okay? So you have to put in the effort to understand what the industry needs, not what you want. That's important too, figuring out what it is, the direction you want to go. But what does the industry need? I got hired at CNN Sports Illustrated because I did that. And I talk to people across the nation all the time. I talk to hiring managers, I talk to talent acquisition managers, and they say 80 to 90% of the people that apply for jobs at our organization do not have the skills or qualifications. So if you make sure that you are matching up with what they want, job descriptions that are out there are an open book test. They are literally telling you exactly what they want. If you go through and make sure you spend the time to do that and match what the industry demands are, when you apply for jobs, you will be noticed. If you don't do that, and you're trying to rest on some other accomplishment that doesn't match what the industry needs, or rest on just what you want, you will have more struggles. So please, please, please take the effort to do the work to understand what the industry wants, because they're the ones that have a gap. They're the ones that have a hole. They're the ones that need help. You have to fill that hole. You can't just say, I'm a big fan, or I want to be a part of this organization, or I got a 3.9. It's not going to do it. Okay. That's my public service announcement. I seriously say that is one of the most important things I can tell anybody, and not enough people do it. So let's jump ahead to networking. Let's go big screen. Okay. Everybody still seeing my screen, right? I didn't mess that up. All right. I saw a hand in the back. You guys got to wake up. It's Friday. I understand, but let's pep it up. Okay. So networking. I am not what you would consider a natural networker. I am not the type of person that likes to go to an event and stand there and yuck it up and start to, exchange business cards. Not my thing. Don't enjoy it. I still have thousands of people in my network. So do not use that as an excuse if that's not your comfort zone. If it is your comfort zone, awesome. Good for you. All right. But it's not everybody's. And you can go about networking other ways. You can go about networking through social media and other ways to start building relationships. Networking, let's go through some of the rules here. Networking is not about quantity. It is absolutely about quality. If you have a good number of people that you have a real connection with that are lined up with where you want to be in the industry, you will be off to a really good start. I have 12,000 people that are connected to me on LinkedIn. Now ask me how many people I actually know or that have interacted with me or that I could say anything positive about or even identify who they are. It's probably 500. Okay. So 11,500 people clicked a button and connected with me, but I have no relationship or connection to. What was the point? Don't do that. Don't be focused on just building a number. Numbers are fake. Build relationships. Be more methodical. So build relationships, not just numbers. Number 3, networking is not just dead water. What I mean by that is you are not going to get immediate benefits from this. There's so oftentimes people will think, I've been networking, I met some people. When do I ask them to get me a job? It doesn't work that way. This has to build over time. You are building a relationship. Think about it like a dating relationship. Have to start slowly. You have to work into these things. I will have people reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will make a connection with them and then they'll drop a 15-paragraph life story in Messenger on me. I'm like, too much. Sorry, can't dedicate this kind of time to it. But if they say something to build a connection, something quick and to the point, something I can give them some insight for, something we can start a dialogue on, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, we'll get into some more tactics and strategies in there. So that's just the overarching. You cannot expect instantaneous results from networking. The results will come, but it's going to take time. So just go in with the right frame of mind. Okay. Let's talk about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn can be absolutely your best tool for making connections and building your network, but you have to be proactive in the way you do it and you have to be intentional. A lot of times people go for the big names. They'll go for the person who's a CEO, or they'll go for the person who is somebody they've heard of before or whatever. You really have to target the right people. And what I mean by that is, who do you have a thread of connection to? So if you have alumni, great reason to reach out to somebody. You have alumni who's working at ESPN and you want to work at ESPN, there's a great reason to reach out, right? So that's one thread. It could be professors that are connected to people. It could be people just doing a job that you want to do. And you can say, I'm a junior at Catawba. I really want to get into operations. I see that you're doing that. Would love to connect and learn more. Just have a why. Now, where does this come into play? When you try to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, you have the opportunity to add a note. And you have 300 characters to add a note. If you do it on your phone, this is where there's thumbs up and thumbs down. If you do it on your phone, it does not give you the option to include a note. There's a subtle nuance that not a lot of people know. If you tried to connect with me right now through your app on your phone, it would just send me a connection request. It would not see a note. But if you do it on your laptop and you're a little bit more intentional, you take a little bit more time, you can include a 300-character note where you explain your why. You explain why you're making this connection. If you do that, you start out the relationship on the right foot because you're setting the groundwork for why. Why should this happen? And that is extremely important. Because if somebody just connects with me and I'm like, sure, okay, I'll accept it. But if somebody connects with me and says, hey, I heard you on the Work in Sports podcast. I really like the advice you're sharing. I would love to connect and continue learning from you. We're off to a much better start. And that is really important. The key thing to remember is a lot of people believe their first impression starts when they see somebody face to face. That's not the case. Your first impression starts with the first email you send somebody, the first time you add a note on LinkedIn, the first time you do anything with anybody, anytime they see you. You may not even realize it's happening. But if your professional presentation is on point, then your first impression will be strong. But I literally had somebody send me a note after speaking in a class just like this earlier this week, and it was broken English, didn't really make sense, looked super sloppy. And right away I came out of that thinking, not a lot of value for me in this conversation. I don't even think they're taking the time to communicate with me professionally. That's a brand impression. That's your first impression. Take your time, slow down, say what you mean to say, double check things. Take your time with emails. Take your time with outreach. Take your time with cover letters, resumes, adding a note. All those things are brand impressions. The sports industry is really small. May feel huge, may seem competitive. It is. We all know each other. You'd be surprised. And people talk. It's a gossipy world, unfortunately, but it's the case. So keep your communication on point. When you do add a note to somebody, you have to realize that you are making a brand impression in that moment. It is super important. That is your first impression that will last and live with you. Do it right. Give them a why. I'm a junior at Catawba. I know you graduated from here. I see you're doing this thing that's super interesting to me. Would love to continue to learn more from you. Boom. Set the stage. Okay. Now, reach out to people. If you listen to our podcast and there's a guest on the podcast who's talking about a career that you are interested in, a scout, a GM, a marketing executive, whomever, a sales director, an operations coordinator, all those people have been on our show and more. Okay. Other shows too. You can listen to other shows other than mine. Reach out to somebody and say, I heard you on the Work in Sports podcast, found what you were saying to be super insightful, would love to connect with you and learn more. That's a why. You're starting the conversation off right. Build relationships. When you connect, now it's up to you to put some work into it. Now, just going through and clicking like when they share things is a vanity metric, okay? The other person, when I share, okay, so I shared a post yesterday about how I was honored because I was interviewing members of the hashtag Sports Creators of Color cohort. So there were 35 members of this Creators of Color cohort, minorities in the sports industry doing amazing creative work. And so I show up and I do interview them all virtually for our upcoming podcast episode. It was awesome. It was inspiring. I loved every minute of it. And I shared some posts on that yesterday and 100 people like it. Do you think I'm sitting back and looking at who liked it and even noticing who those people are? I'm not that vain. I may be vain, but I'm not that vain, right? So liking somebody's post is good, but it's not really building a relationship. Read what they're sharing. Comment on it. Ask a question, an open-ended question. Hey, Brian, tell me more about this event. It sounds really cool. Now you're engaging with somebody. Okay? Or how did you get involved in this? Or when are you going to publish this podcast? Or what are you going to do with this information? Or who impressed you the most? Ask questions. Be curious. That's how you engage with somebody. And you know what? Then I'm going to remember you. Then I'm going to be like, oh, okay. I remember them. They asked me a really good question about that article that I shared about how the NFL ratings are up or whatever. That's how you build a brand, a reputation, and you get seen as a professional thought leader. Liking somebody's post, okay, doesn't move the needle by itself. You can do that. Like the post, comment, share it, get involved a little differently, and then talk to them as well. If you see, so you've targeted some people, we'll get into a real life example in a little bit, but if you see something that happens with their organization, share it with them. Go to them and say, hey, I just saw that you guys broke attendance records. What did you do differently this year? Now it shows them you're paying attention. You know what's happening in the industry and you're curious to learn more. This is how networking works. Notice, you're not starting out by saying, I really want to work in your field. Can you help me get a job? They can't help you get a job. They don't know you. They've never worked with you. I see a hand up. Go.
You may have mentioned it, but what connection did you make to get from Sports Illustrated to Fox?
To get from Sports Illustrated to where? I'm sorry? To Fox Sports?
So your next job. Yes.
So for me, I mean, at that point, I had been in the industry for 7 years, so I had a bit of a brand. I just had a bit of a reputation. So I was producing really good work. But I will tell you, okay, so this is the next point. I'm glad you actually asked this. This is a really good point to make. Networking happens horizontally just as much as it happens vertically. What I mean by that, and I'm going to answer your question, don't worry. What I mean by that is, yeah, you'll want to network with people that are decision makers, mid-level managers, you know, executives, et cetera, directors. You also want to network with the people that are on your level, or the people that you're working with, or the people that you're interning with, because all of them are going to go out to other places. So what happened for me was Chris Rose was an anchor that I was a producer for at CNN Sports Illustrated. And he went on to host the Best Damn Sports Show, period, which was the flagship show on Fox Sports. And he recruited me. He asked me to come and be a producer there for Best Damn Sports Show, period. Two of us, actually, a guy named Steve Becker and myself, got asked to go and become producers for that show because he trusted us and enjoyed working with us. I didn't want to move to LA. So I interviewed through the process, but I wasn't sure LA was where I wanted to go. So I interviewed through the process, and they said, you know, there's another opportunity. We would hire you for this, but we also have this opportunity to be the news director at Fox Sports Northwest in Seattle. And I thought, I like that idea. I want to go run my own shop. So I decided to make that move instead. But that's where networking came in. Chris and I worked together, right? At the same time, I'll tell you, when I first started at CNN Sports Illustrated, there were 25 of us that were hired at the same time. Now those 25 people are VPs at ESPN, SVPs at Comcast Sportsnet New England, Big 12 Network, Pac-12 Network, Pac-12 Network. Today, Willie Geist is a host of the Today Show. I mean, I could go on through this list. So those are my friends who I came up with the industry, and we all went out from there. Your friends that you meet on an internship will go to other places. Those are your connections. Those are your network, just as much as the mid-level manager you meet. So it happens across both vertically and horizontally. Okay. Does that answer your question? We good?
Yeah.
All right. Good. Okay. So having a reason to start the conversation with people and doing that through social media can be a great way to start building your own reputation. At the same time, you can be aggressive and posting things that are industry relevant too. LinkedIn is a great tool for that. It's where conversations are on point and more business focused. It's a way for you to present yourself as a thought leader. So take that opportunity seriously. Okay, so let's go through that real world example that I wanted to give you. So, because I think real world, what's happening out there, actionable advice is really the key here. Okay, so I had somebody that I had spoken to in a college class like this. They connected with me on LinkedIn. They started asking good questions. We built a bit of a relationship. And they came to me at one point and said, I figured it out. I figured out my career clarity. I figured out what that thing is that I really want to do. I want to work in operations for an NBA team. Awesome. So I said, look, first thing's on you. You have to go do the work and understand what the demands are of that job, what the skills are that are in demand, and put a plan together to learn those things. That's on you. Okay, focus on that. I said, but let's create a networking strategy for you to go along with it. Because like I told you before, the two things go hand in hand. Getting the right experience, meeting the right people. And remember, it's a quality game, not a quantity game. So he says, all right, what's the strategy? And I said, great. Go reach out to all 30 operations coordinators in the G League. So I know your goal is to make it to the NBA, but let's start a little bit below that and start building your network from the bottom. Operations coordinator is the job that he would be most likely to do, or this person would be most likely to do, because it's an entry-level job in operations in pro sports. I said, go connect with all those people, because every team has one, and they are likely to be 2 or 3 years out of college. They are going to be their foot recently in the door. They are going to want to pay it forward and help somebody else out and build somebody else up. Maybe not all of them, but some of them. And there's the right person to connect with, because they've also just recently been hired. So you can get some advice from them, and they can maybe even become a bit of a mentor for you. So start there. And they did that. Put together a nice little 300 character, add a note way to reach out to people, and 14 of them accepted. So 14 out of 30. 16 didn't. Who cares? Okay. Don't get mired in what doesn't happen. Focus on what does happen. That's 14 connections this person did not have prior. But just making the connection isn't enough. So I said, this is where now you need to get really active with those 14 people. Set up Google alerts. Set up different ways of setting alerts so that you know when news happens around their organization. Be able to engage with them. Like I said before, comment on their posts, read what they're sharing, be visible in their world. Are they part of other groups? Be in those groups. Are they sharing information about a certain subject? Learn more about that subject and interact with them on it. These are the people you want to connect with. This is the quality of your network. These people are where you want to be. Learn how they got there. Ask, and then start to layer in some questions. Hey, like I said, you just signed this new, I just saw you guys sign this new sponsorship deal. How did it come about? I see that you changed all your concessions to payless, to remote payment, to paperless. What was that process like? I see you changed all your security systems. I see you booked a new guest at halftime. How did you go about getting there? Ask questions, get in their world, understand their rhythm of things. And anybody in these positions is going to love to share their accomplishments. Oh man, it was amazing. We brought in Lady Gaga. It was incredible. Probably not in the G League, but you get my point, right? So how did these things go about happening? How did you change this over? Why did you break attendance records? Ask questions that are relevant to their work. And you start to present yourself as being worthy of conversation. If you're just calling out to them and saying like, hey, how did you get your job? And can you get me hired? That's going to put them off right away. Start building your professional reputation with them, showing value and intrigue, showing curiosity and interest. And you start to get to a point where then after a little bit, you can layer in more questions like, I'm coming up on graduation kind of soon. Just wondering, what was your approach to getting hired by the Northern Arizona Suns or whoever it was? Okay. You can start to layer in more questions that are focused on you, but after you started to build the relationship some, after you started to present some value. Okay. So this person's doing that. 6 months later, a job opens up with it was the Long Island Nets. Okay. This was 3 years ago, but job opens up with the Long Island Nets for an operations coordinator. And this person says to me, oh, shucks, that's not one of the teams I have a connection with. And I'm like, that's not the point. You know 14 people in the G League that are doing this job. I said, okay, so how many of them do you have, like narrow it down for me. Of the 14, how many have engaged back with you? How many are you building a dialogue with? How many respond to you? How many do you kind of interact with? And he's like 6 really well. The other 14, like the other 8 pretty well. I'm like, good. Start with the 6. Reach out to them today and say, I saw this job opening with the Long Island Nets. Do you happen to know anybody over there? You're not asking them, can you refer me? They haven't worked with you. You're not asking them, can you get me a job? They can't do that. But if you lay it up to them in a very nonchalant way of saying, do you know anybody over there? Then they may take the bait and take it one step forward, but you're not being too presumptive. You're not asking them too much. You're not putting them in an awkward position. You're just saying, do you know anybody over there? All 6 of these people responded to them and say, yeah, I know somebody over there. Send me your resume. I'll get it to them today. That's how networking works. 14 people, not 5,000 connections, 14 of the right people focusing in on where you want to go, building a relationship, working at it, sharing some knowledge, asking some good questions. And then when the time is right, seizing the opportunity to get in front of the hiring manager that matters. 6 people sent his resume, 6 coworkers in the NBA G League that this person probably knows sent his resume to their door. Doesn't get any better than that. Now, if he didn't have the experience to do the job, the person at the Long Island Nets would be like, that's nice that you guys send me his resume, but it doesn't match up with what I need. He can't do this job. I'm not going to hire him. But because this person had both, had the experience, put in the work to understand what was needed, put in the work to build the network, to have that connection, the two things come together. Magic. I'm not overstating this. This is how it works, but it's not going to happen overnight. And that's my point. I see a hand up. Go ahead.
When is the best time to like follow up with someone? Because obviously there's like hundreds of people applying for these jobs and sometimes I don't see it.
Yeah. So when you apply for a job, so are you saying like after you maybe had a first like phone interview, or are you saying like after you've applied just in general?
So maybe you send an email and they like don't respond or something.
Right. So,
You're like, you're trying-
there's two major keys, and I will get into this a little bit when we talk about interviewing, but there's two major keys that employers want to see in people that apply for their jobs: that they are qualified and that they are interested, meaning they have the skills to do the job and they really want this particular job, not just to work for this team, not just to be in this area, not for any other peripheral reason. They really want this job. And trust me, I am getting into your answer, but I'm just giving enough context here. They want to know that you're interested in that job, because if you're not, and you just want to be there, or you just want to get your foot in the door, that's like, I hate that saying, but I'll probably use it anyway. Just want to get your foot in the door, just want to get in there. Like, the employer says to themselves, wait a second, if you just want to get your foot in the door and you don't really want to do this job, that means I'm going to have to go through this whole process again in 3 months when you try to transfer out of this department, or you try to get a different job within this organization. I'm gonna have to go through this process all over again. So they're looking for people that are qualified and interested. And so the reason I bring that up is because when you follow up, when you reach out, it sends off a message to them that you are interested and this job is important to you. So it is good to do that. I talked with Malin Vu, who's the director of talent acquisition for the Cleveland Indians, and I asked her exactly that. I said, what do you really want to see if somebody applies for a job, and do you really want them to follow up? And she said, absolutely. I want them to reach out because it tells me that this is important to them and that they really want the job. And they're not just throwing out their application, they want to get this job. And especially if you have an interview. If you have an interview, video interview, phone interview, virtual interview, any kind of interview, you should be following up within 3 to 5 days if you haven't heard anything. You should also be asking at the end of that interview, and we'll get into this a little bit, you should also be asking at the end of that interview, when they say, what questions do you have for me? The very final thing you ask, there should be other questions, but the very final thing you ask should be, what are the next steps? When do you expect to make a decision? And getting to the answer of that too. So you have a bit of a timeline, but definitely follow up 100%. It does not hurt to do it. 3 to 5 days. Okay. So let's jump ahead then. We'll get into, let me get my, unless there are any other questions on networking stuff, we're going to jump ahead to interviewing. Anybody see any other hands? I can't quite see everybody. So if there's hands there, let me know.
Good.
We're good. All right. Then we're going to keep
All
moving.
good.
Okay. I'll go overarching and then we'll get into the weeds a little bit. Interviewing for jobs and internships. Like I said, most important part, this is the final sprint. So research beforehand, incredibly important. So you're set up and ready to perform in the moment. Research, we'll get into what you research in a second, but really putting in the work beforehand. So it not only builds your comfort level because you're more knowledgeable about the organization and a lot of the factors behind it, but it also will let you weave some of the things you've learned into the conversation when you're having the conversation. Stop talking about it in an interview. It's a conversation, right? As you're having this conversation with somebody about this job, you can weave in some of that knowledge that you've researched. Again, it's the right kind of signal that you're giving off and they will pick up on it. Reviewing your experiences. Number one thing that's going to happen, and this kind of dovetails with the final bullet point here. One of the things that's going to happen in every interview is you're going to be asked questions that say, tell me about a time you faced an urgent situation and had to meet a deadline. What'd you do? Or tell me about a time you had to work on a group project. How did you work with your team? So they're going to ask you to tell me about a time. That's behavioral interview questions. That's what that's called. But what happens so often, and I interview people all the time, all right, I hire a lot. I have throughout my career. Most of the time, people will sit there and be like, ooh, I know there was something I did that fit this description, but I can't think of it right now. If you literally go through the day before you have an interview and review your notes from your internships, review your notes from your past experiences, think about some of these broader things that you've done so that you can recount them the day of, you will be way, way, way better prepared. Prepare your technology. Most interviews nowadays are happening through video. Connect direct, don't do Wi-Fi. We'll get into some nuance here. Work on your lighting, have it towards your face rather than behind you so that they can see your face and body language and there can be a connection. And invest possibly in a microphone or a better webcam. I mean, you don't have to go as fancy as I have, but that's for podcast. You can have a USB microphone for $100 and you sound a lot better and that makes the connection that much better and it is worth it. Practice with friends, record yourself, watch it back. The vibe you want to give off in an interview. Again, I said this before, but Qualified and interested is what they're looking for. They're also looking for confident and excited. You will be told by a lot of people that you have to be really buttoned up and tight and right to the point and matter of fact during interview. This is the sports industry, people. It's passionate, it's energetic, it's enthusiastic. You can be excited to be there. You can be excited about the opportunity. Every interview I've ever had, I've been thrilled to get that chance, and I made sure they knew it. And it worked every damn time. You can smile. You can be excited. You can be enthusiastic. Matter of fact, you really should, because that is infectious. And this is an energetic, passionate industry. And the more enthusiasm and energy you can bring to the conversation, the more you give off a vibe that you're excited to be here rather than like stiff and concerned, the better off you will be, the better impression you will make. Okay, so research. Everybody always says, okay, you talk about research. What does that mean? How do they make money? How does this organization work? How does the business work? Who are their clients? Who do they work with? Remember, you're doing a lot of this work to figure out if it's somewhere you want to be too. You may find out that they have clients that you don't align with philosophically, and you may want to pull yourself out of the situation. That's okay. That's important stuff for you to know. You're deciding on them just as much as they're deciding on you. What's the corporate structure? Who's in charge? What are the levels of the company? What's a possible career path for you? Where's your growth potential? What are they in the news for? What's the latest things that happens around this organization? What's the company culture and work environment? Okay, you definitely better know that. You got to ask questions about how do you invest in your employees? What's a professional development? How do you do training and advanced and growth? Like, you want to know how much they invest in their people too. Who are their main competitors? Who are they out there against? What's the company history? If you put in this work to know this stuff, you'll be more comfortable when you're in the moment, and you'll be able to pull some of this stuff out when you start to tell your stories. I'm going to skip this. Take notes. Basically what that was is build yourself a spreadsheet or use the one that I can supply to you and keep track of all your interviews. You're going to have 5 or 6 applications out at a time. You're going to have different contacts. You're going to have different things in different phases. Keep it organized because it's going to get confusing to you. And then you're going to get a call one day when you're at Starbucks from GMR Marketing, and you're going to be like, who the hell is GMR Marketing? I don't even remember applying for that job. The more you write things down and keep them organized, the better off you'll be when that moment hits. Because you're not going to know when it's happening necessarily. So just keep yourself organized and prepared. It will help you. Let's get into virtual interviews. Don't love this process. Not a huge fan, but it's happening, so you have to be aware of it. So virtual interviews, if you haven't heard a lot about them, I'll get you into it right now. So how do they work? You apply for a job, okay? And maybe you'll get an email back from them and it will say, we're interested in learning more about you. We'd like you to follow this link and record yourself answering a question. Oh, okay, right? That's a little bit weird. I was kind of expecting I'd talk to a person. This is happening a lot. So you might get provided a question, you might get provided a series of questions, and you have a small amount of time, they'll tell you, to record your answer, and that's it. Experience over. Now, I don't love these because I think there's a very personal aspect of interviewing. I want to hire somebody that I feel like I am made a connection with, I understand, I can really see what they're like and if they fit in our environment. And this is an initial filtering out process that a lot of organizations are using. Now, I spoke with John Ferguson, who's the Chief People Officer, formerly of the Monumental Sports and Entertainment, Washington Wizards, Capitals, Mystics, but now he's the Chief People Officer at NASCAR. I talked to him about this and I'm like, I hate these things. Why do you guys do them? And he basically said, listen, they remove bias from the process. I'm not asking one person a follow-up that I don't ask another person. I'm not giving off warmth to one person that I'm not giving to another person. We are keeping it straight and on point, and everybody gets the same experience. Okay, I hear what you're saying. I get it. Not against it. Don't love it. But either way, it's happening whether I love it or not. So you got to prepare for it. So what's going to happen in these environments? Most of the time, you're going to get a question that's extremely broad. So this is very common, this question I have up here. Describe a work-related achievement you are proud of. Talk about what you had to accomplish and how you did it. Okay, so this is what I mean about reviewing your experiences and remembering yourself. Think about some of these broad topics of like, what are those big achievements that I've made, that I've done? Something I'm proud of. Like I manage a team of 10 people now on our content team through iHire and Work in Sports. And I just had a group meeting with everybody where we're doing our bi-weekly kind of review meeting and setting up the stage. And I'm leading this meeting. And I started it out for the first half hour. And I said, everybody in the room, I want you to tell me about your favorite piece of content that you've ever built. What is that one thing you're super proud of? And it was awesome because people were talking about things they did in like college, things they've done on the job, things they've done for their kid's birthday party, like just they were exuding things they were passionate about. That's what you have to do for yourself too. You have to think about some of those big accomplishments, those big work related things. When you had something unexpected happen, when you overcame some doubt, when you didn't think you were going to be able to get the job done and you did, have those stories prepared in your mind before these moments happen, because chances are you're going to be able to weave those things into almost whatever question they ask. Because it's all going to be some variations on a big theme like this. Tell me about a work related achievement. Tell me about how you overcame an objection. Tell me about how you handled a difficult customer before. Like, just think about these things you're proud of, because that's mostly what it's going to be. And practice answering some of those things in 45 seconds, because it's going to go fast and then it's over. If you can just exude yourself with confidence, make eye contact, because when you're doing it, you're looking directly at your camera lens. You're not looking at the screen down here. You're looking at your camera lens. I'm looking at you guys now as I do this, but you should be like making eye contact with your actual camera lens. That's eye contact. If you do that, if you stand up tall, if you have some smile on your face and in your voice, and you really deliver a good 45-second story, that is the best you can do. And that's something you can be proud of. And it's not about work-related achievement. Could be you had a really difficult customer as a waiter and how you handled them. It shows maturity. It shows some leadership. It shows some, agility to handle a problem. Those are good indicators of somebody who is trainable and can be worked with. So don't think it has to be like perfect for this particular role either. It just has to be, when you're starting out in your career and early on, it has to be something that's memorable and that can kind of stand out and can make a memorable story. Because then they're going to ferret this out. They're going to take this clip and they're going to shoot it over to the hiring manager and say, hey, check out this person. This is a pretty good answer. Then you get to the next phase. Okay, so be ready for this process, because it probably will happen to you. Video interviews. So what we always used to talk about is it was like phone interview, video interview with your direct manager, and then it was like panel interview where you're doing like 2 coworkers, a senior level manager, and the person who would be your boss. And that was kind of the rhythm of how a lot of decisions were happening in the interview process. Well, now it's changed a little bit because of COVID, right? You're doing more virtual interviews, you're still doing some phone interviews, but most everything is video interviews. So you got to be ready for this. So quickly to get through it, you will notice that you can see my face really well because I have 2 lights here. I have a professional light kit, right? You guys don't have to get a professional light kit, but don't have an open window behind you where the light is coming behind you, because it will actually shade out your face and we can't see you. We're not making eye contact with you. We're not really seeing your emotion. There's no connection there. So get light towards your face. Even if you sit with your computer in a window open towards you, natural light, great. Just don't have it behind you or too harsh above you, because that will it will darken out your face. Connect in, right? Hardwire in your computer, get into a quiet area, upgrade your computer, your camera, consider getting a better microphone. USB microphones are under $100. Like, you can just get a better one that's built into your laptop. You want to be able to be heard and seen and have your connection strong. Super important. Body language really matters. Connectivity matters. Look into your camera and make eye contact. You will also always get a bit of a delay in a conversation, so wait a beat. When somebody asks their question, wait a beat, then answer. Don't step on their words. Don't try to jump in too early. Show some patience, wait a second, answer. There is a rhythm in there. And if you're stepping over them and they're trying to talk, that's not what anybody wants to see. Wait, listen, be really active listening, make sure you understand the scope of the question, then jump in, okay? Next, you will be asked. So, what questions do you have for me? That will happen in every interview you are ever in for your entire life. You will go for 45 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes will be, what questions do you have for me? So there's a theme throughout this entire presentation, asking questions, right? Here's the trick. This is low tech, but it's super powerful, right? When you are 45 minutes into an interview and you've been pouring your soul and you've been recounting all these stories and you've been really connecting with this person, you are going to hit a point of mental exhaustion. And even if you spent an hour before this interview thinking of follow-up questions, you're probably going to forget them. I have. Use the advantage of being on video. Take sticky notes, put them around the outside of your laptop. They'll never see them. They have no idea. Put little notes for yourself on the outside of your webcam and give yourself a couple little bullet points on each one that will help trigger your memory. Like, oh, right, I wanted to ask a question about, what does success look like in the first 90 days in this job, whatever it may be. So have some of those follow-up poster on the outside so that you're looking at them, you're answering their questions, they're asking you, what questions you have for me? And you can take a quick glance and then look right back and say, so what does success look like in the first 90 days in this position? Now you're a baller. That's professional. You just nailed that. Let them talk for a little bit about it. Look for your next one. Set yourself up, get in there. Give yourself 7 to 10 of those, because chances are some of them are going to be answered during the actual interview, and you're not going to want to follow up on those because they've already been answered. They've already come up. Give yourself 7 to 10 of those, and then you'll probably get to ask 3. But you don't want to write 3 and have 3 of them come up in the conversation and be like, I'm out, got nothing, right? Give yourself a little bit more and be prepared for those moments. So what do you ask? Well, okay, let's run through a few. You want to send a message to them that you want this job and that you want to be successful in this job. That's the message you're trying to get. Remember, your lasting impression of these questions that you ask. It's going to be everything you talked about to this point, but it's also going to be these moments. So, in your opinion, what does success look like in this role? How would you evaluate my performance? You're saying, I want to know what it looks like to be successful. Tell me what it looks like to be successful, because I want to hit that mark. Great message. In what ways did the person previously in this role succeed, and in what ways did they fail? Okay, now you're sending a message. I want to know where they weren't strong because I want to be stronger. And where they were good, I want to be just as good. I want to know what those things are. Powerful message. How would you describe the company culture, and how much emphasis do you put on developing that culture? You want to know that. The first 2 questions, you're sending a message. This one, you want to know the answer to. If they don't invest in their company culture, I'm going to tell you a quick story. This is not to make anybody feel guilty. This is just to tell you. On Monday this week, our company sent an email to the entire company, said everybody's off on Friday. We want everybody to take a mental health day. The whole office is shutting down. I'm not working today. I'm just here for you. I'm off. But the point is, my company just told all of us, you get Friday off. We want you all to take a mental health day. That's about culture. That's about experience. That's about what my work life is like. If you ask this question and they can't give you a good answer, if you ask a question about culture and how much they invest in their people, how much training do they do? How much growth do they have? How do you build up your staff? If they can't answer that, huge red flag. Huge red flag. Anybody should be able to answer that in a hiring sense, to understand how much they care about their culture. What are the most important aspects of the role that you'd like me to see master in the first 90 days? Most employers look at the first 90 days as a benchmark, right? We know the first 30 days, you're learning how things operate. The second 30 days, you're starting to contribute. By 90 days, you should be contributing. So what are those things? What are those things you expect to see in the first 90 days? You're trying to make an impression that you're thinking about, I'm in this role. Mentally, I'm in this role right now. And I want to know what it looks like to be the best at it. These questions are powerful. These are powerful, lasting moments. Then you finish strong and you ask those things. Hey, I'm really excited about this role and opportunity. What are the next steps in the process, and when do you expect to make a decision? That's okay to put them on the spot like that. They should be able to answer that. If they can't, not a great sign. But I do that in every interview. I'm like, we are looking to make, right now, we're going to finalize this. I have 3 more interviews I'm doing. We're going to make a next decision. We're going to have a panel interview. Then we're going to have something by the 27th. I'm always willing to give that. Everybody should be. And you should be able to get that. Okay. I'll get this quick. Actually, we're running out of time. So let's call this out. What questions do y'all, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Which questions do you guys have for me?
I have one. Sorry that I'm all the way in the back. I'll try to be loud. But a big bad habit of mine with interviews is I come into an interview and regardless of how prepared I am, I always feel like I'm really nervous going into that interview. What is the best way to kind of avoid portraying that you are nervous when you walk in?
Okay, I think I heard you, but I'm not 100% sure. Did you ask about dealing with nerves before an interview?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is funny. And it's a great question, and it's really important to understand. Everybody gets nervous, so give yourself some grace there. I've done 250 interviews on the Work in Sports podcast, and I've done thousands before that in my sports media career. I'm nervous as can be before every one of them. Okay, so that's okay. A little bit of nervous energy is okay. But a friend of mine who's a really big public speaker also gets a lot of anxiety before these moments and told me that what she does is 15 minutes before each. Now, every person's going to have their own trigger, their own thing that works. But she's like, I always have this feeling like I'm going to vomit on stage. So that's my anxiety. That's the thing that I get worried about. That's what I picture in my fear profile. And she's like, so 15 minutes before every show, I eat a banana because that helps me settle my stomach. And then I go in 10 minutes into a quiet room and have no other distractions. Now, I don't bring this up saying you should do those exact things, but I'm saying you should figure out what that thing is that can kind of give you some level of calm and peace. It's okay to be nervous before everything. You just can't let that leak into your performance. You're a performer in these things, okay? Focus in. I also think the more research you do, the more work you do into yourself, the more preparation you do. Think about it. If I show up to a test and I haven't done the work, I'm going to be really, really nervous because I know it's going to go poorly. But if I put in the work and I know what I'm doing and I'm confident in the knowledge, I've put in the work to get there, I'm not quite as nervous. Now, I get nervous before every interview, but I've also put in a lot of work to structure all my questions, to research the guest, to get myself ready. So the nervousness is fleeting. As soon as I start to get into it, that goes away. I just have this nervousness of the initial moment. Are they going to be cool? Are we going to hit it off? Are they going to be like standoffish? Like, what is that going to be like? So identify that. What are those things that you are feeling nervous about, and what can you control? Control the things you can, let go of the things you can't. And there's a lot of things you can't control in this process, but you can control your effort. You can control your research. You can control your preparation. If you do those things, you should be better off. I saw another hand. Go ahead. I know I saw another hand. I'm not seeing things, I swear. Yes, go. I can't hear you at all. So if sorry, I can't hear you. Can you start again?
So in taking notes in interviews, when you're asking a question to them, waiting for the response, would you take the notes while you're in that interview or after the?
Taking notes during an interview, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, totally. Whether or not it's acceptable or not? Is that what you're kind of asking? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I always have, like through every experience in my day, I have an open notebook on everything, and I'm always taking notes. And I actually think it shows a line of a level of professionalism. And I think writing things down and giving yourself some notes or wanting to follow up on things. Now, I also come from a sports media background, so I always have a notepad with me, and I'm always taking notes on everything. That's just part of my approach and part of the industry approach. But I think those things, again, the message you're sending is that I want to make sure I get these things, that I'm not missing anything, that I'm on top of it. So I am totally on board with that. I think it's great. So again, remember the vibe you're giving off. If you're like distracted and looking around and doing other things, or like that sends the wrong message. But if you're taking notes and trying to be professional and thinking about your next step or your next action, I think that's totally great. You know, we tell people all the time too, if you need to take a breath before you answer the question, that's okay too. Like, just give yourself a minute to settle in and go. If sometimes you're not sure about the question, you ask a clarifying question. Say like, oh, do you mean this or that? Like, that's okay too. So don't be too rigid. Taking notes is totally fine. All that sort of stuff. I mean, you take notes if you were in a meeting at work. Why wouldn't you take notes when you're in an interview? I think it's totally fine. And it will help you with your follow-up questions, or where you want to steer the question, or how you want to answer things. It's all part of building the right story to come out of it. Good question. Who else can I help?
Ryan, I've got, students are asking us for advice and back in music a lot. So I've got 2 years, and I wonder if, what is my advice instead? Within the cover letter, I'm not a big fan of the phrase of the candidate saying, while I'm saying the phrase, these are the reasons why I'm the best candidate for the job.
I'm sorry, it's breaking up when you try to talk. Do you mind coming? I could hear her really well and she got close. I heard cover letter, but I really couldn't hear the rest of it, and I apologize.
Yeah. You know, on a cover letter, when a candidate will write all these things and then they'll end it with, these are the reasons why I'm the best candidate for the job.
Yeah.
I wonder what your thoughts are. I'm not a big fan of that phraseology because you don't know who's actually applied. You can come across a little arrogant, or do you look at that and go, "Hey, that's a confident person. I'm glad they said that."
That's a cool question. Okay, I have a couple different thoughts here. For one, I think let's handle the direct question, but also give a broader answer on cover letters. Okay, so cover letters are really bad when somebody just takes their resume and puts it in paragraph form, because that's not expanding the narrative. That's not telling me anything more about you. Cover letters should tell a accomplishment story, should get to some point, should tell me something I don't know about you, can help me understand your soft skills. Like your resume is going to tell me the skills you have. Your cover letter can tell me that you're leader and work ethic and passion, without just saying those things woven into a story. And at the end, I think what you need to do is be more subtle than that. I totally get what you're saying, Dwayne. I don't love that either because it's a little bit cocky. I like confident. That comes off cocky. Like I'm the best, I'm definitely the best one for this job. It's like, prove it. Like how? So I think I'll give you a quick example. I had a cover letter once that I wrote for myself. This was relatively early in my career, but I told a story basically about how I was the lead editor for our NFL programming. And we had an NFL preview show on Sunday mornings. And it took me 2 days to edit all the components, all the video, all the packages, all the sound bites, all the teases, everything, all the opens and closes. It took me 2 days to edit all those components. And it was Saturday night and it was 8 o'clock and I had just finished and our entire editing system crashed. Everything was gone. My boss came up to me and said, "You know what to do, right?" Yep. And without really getting into it, what she was saying was, the show still airs at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're staying all night. You got to get it done. And I just did it and got it on the air the next day. Everything went off without a hitch. Everybody out there watching had no idea. So what I did by that was show that I have passion, dedication, leadership, loyalty, drive, grit, whatever you want to call it, all those soft skills. I didn't just list off a bunch of terms. I didn't just say I'm the best for the job. I exemplified it through an accomplishment, through a story I could tell that I could weave into my narrative. That is a much more effective cover letter than rehashing your resume and then saying I'm the best one for the job, right? Avoid those kind of techniques where you're just listing off things and get into some story that exemplifies those things. Bring yourself to life. Increase the story, make them want to learn more about you. If you can do that, that's an effective cover letter.
And I have one more question. This one's about interviewing for multiple positions. So we had a student last summer. He was interviewing with two positions, was a finalist with both. And the first one made an offer, but he really wanted the second one. And that was still a week away from an offer coming. So I wonder what advice you have about transparency for students who are interviewing with multiple positions.
This is like the hardest question. I love you asked it because like it happens. It's real life and it is hard to manage. And I get them all the time where it's like, my dream job's over here and I'm waiting on a response, and this other job offered and they want me to declare in the next 24 hours. It's so hard to tell somebody what to do in that instance because everybody's situation is different. Some people might be bound by different financial constraints and like, I need to take the bird in the hand. I need to take the job offer that's here rather than aim for this thing that could happen that I really want. And I respect that. So it comes down to individual preference and risk tolerance. Not everybody's comfortable taking on that additional risk and want to take that one that's right in front of them. And I respect that. But if it were me, I mean, you only have so many shots at the job that you really want. And if you're progressing toward that, I would be transparent with the other company, the first company, and say, I'm in process with another company and I need another week to make a decision or some frame of time. Can't go overboard. You can't say I need another month. You can't say I need 2 weeks. You might be able to buy yourself another week though. And I think being transparent and being honest could maintain both opportunities. So if it were me, and again, I'm stressing, every individual has to make their own choice in this. It's like talking about internships. Not everybody has the time to do as many as others, right? Do what you can. Same concept here. Other people are bound by different things. Some people are working their ass off to just pay for their own college and don't have the opportunity to push off an opportunity. And if that's the case, take the bird in the hand and go forward and grow and learn everything you can and grow to that next position in the future. But if you can, take a little bit of a risk. Tell that first company, I'm in process with another organization. I'm going to need a week to make a decision. And if they say no, you have another decision to make. But at least you're being transparent. At least you're being honest. You're not going to take that job and then quit in a week because you got the other one offered. That's unprofessional. It sends off the wrong message. But if you're transparent and you say, I'm in process with another organization, I need another week to make a decision. They may be like, okay, we can give you one more week, but we need to keep moving here. Okay, you got it. We will keep moving. And then stay with the other person's process. Now, do not go to that other dream company and say, I need to make a decision within a week. They're not going to care. That's your problem. That's not going to influence their decision. They're not going to feel pressured to hire you because your schedule is tight. Don't try to leverage that stuff. Follow their pattern. And you might come to another point where you have to make another hard decision. These are hard decisions. Life isn't easy. But you may have some of these moments come up. Your best bet is to be transparent and clear and honest, because then at least at the end of the day, you can feel good about your own decisions. And know your own risk tolerance, because every person's going to be a little bit different on that continuum.
All right, we're really appreciative of your time. This is great content. I know our students are going to be digesting this. I've seen a lot of notes taken here. So this is excellent information. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Please, everybody, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. When you connect with me, you're connected with every guest I've ever had on our show, every other person that's in my network, but you have to include a note or else I'm not going to accept it. So that's the throwing down the gauntlet.